Hello campers, Counselor Udrew here, and today I'm taking a trek through the Friday the 13th timeline, a series notorious for its lack of continuity. So let's see if I can find logic in the illogical. Here's my timeline of the first 4 Friday the 13th movies. We start off with a flashback from the climax of the original Friday the 13th. It's 1957, and Jason Voorhees drowns at Camp Crystal Lake while counselors are preoccupied with having sex. Since we're never given a precise date, I can only say it's sometime during the summer. A TV program in Jason Goes to Hell tells us Jason was born in 1946, meaning he was only 11 years old.
Born in 1946 to Elias and Pamela Voorhees, Jason was believed to have drowned in Camp Crystal Lake at the tender age of 11.
Jumping back to the film's intro, it's a year later. Jason's mother, Pamela, kills 2 counselors caught in the act, leading to the closure of the camp. While the script has it being the 4th of July, the full moon contradicts that, but more on that later. Further into the film, we hear of additional incidences from a local truck driver.
In 1962, they was gonna open up, the water was bad. A bunch of fires. Nobody knows who did any of them.
Ryan started the fire! It was always burning, everybody was turning!
Flashing forward to the then present day, it's Friday, June 13th, 1980. Steve Christie reopens his family's camp against Crazy Ralph's warnings, only to be murdered, along with 6 counselors, by Pamela Voorhees. Misreading the room, Mrs. Voorhees informs would-be victim Alice Hardy that it's Jason's birthday.
Jason was my son, and today is his birthday.
After a drawn-out game of cat and mouse, Alice says off with her head to Mrs. Voorhees. Now, the date of the first Friday the 13th is actually a topic of some contention. In the year the film was released, 1980, June 13th was in fact a Friday, confirming Sergeant Tierney's complaint.
Not bad enough to have Friday the 13th. We gotta have a full moon, too.
However, the moon wasn't full on June 13th, 1980, but maybe Tierney's eyesight is going. I mean, he didn't see Jason jump out of the wall, goddammit. Furthermore, in Friday the 13th, the final chapter, Pamela's grave says she died a year earlier in 1979. But since June 13th, 1979 wasn't a Friday, or a full moon either for that matter, I'm going to say a typo was made. After all, who even paid for that gravestone? And as for our lunar cycle situation, it seems the moon is always full on Crystal Lake. Unless...
That's no moon. It's a space station.
The following day, June 14th, Alice wakes up in a canoe, only to be attacked by an undead Jason. Since this jump scare sequence doesn't make any sense continuity-wise, and no one else in the film sees it happen, it's safe to assume it was all in Alice's head. The real-world explanation is that the filmmakers were ripping off the end of Carrie, and didn't care if it made any sense.
But Jason's dead, he said, and I clearly remember that, if it's a dream, you can get away with anything.
We catch up with Alice in the next film 2 months later, as noted by Paul Holt.
She disappeared 2 months later.
That's right, the sequel brings back the first film's leading lady, only to kill her off in the first 12 minutes, robbing the series of its Laurie Strode equivalent. You see, it turns out Jason survived his dip in the lake all those years ago, and somehow lived long enough to avenge his mother's decapitation. After that, we skip a few years to 1983, with a flashback from Friday the 13th Part 3. While vacationing at her family's ranch, Higgins Haven, teenager Chris Higgins is attacked by a hairless Jason before blacking out and waking up in her bed. Back in Part 2, Paul Holt begins training counselors for a new summer camp at Packanack Lodge, pointing out that it's been 5 years since the events of the first film, making it 1985.
5 years. 5 long years he's been dormant.
Cut to the next day. Crazy Ralph is killed before he can warn 6 more counselors and 1 law enforcement officer of their impending doom at the hands of a grown-up Jason, who now cosplays as the Phantom from The Town That Dreaded Sundown. After some clever psychological manipulation of the killer's mommy issues, and with a little help from Paul, final girl Ginny Field manages to drive a machete into Jason's shoulder, subduing him long enough to escape. And oh hey, a full moon. The ending of Friday the 13th Part 2 is another of the franchise's most confusing moments. After a false scare involving the dog Muffin, Ginny's attacked again by a very hairy Jason. The next thing we know, Ginny's being loaded into an ambulance and calling for Paul, leading many to speculate Paul is dead. Even screenwriter Ron Kurz confesses he intended for Paul to be deceased. A deleted gag in which Pamela's severed head opened her eyes and smiled to the camera was meant to subtly imply Holt's demise. However, the following film has Jason removing his machete immediately after Paul and Ginny escape, and a news report fails to list Paul in the body count.
8 corpses have been discovered in what has already been called the most brutal and heinous crime in local history.
Furthermore, since Jason is again hairless in part 3, it looks like Ginny's Jason jump scare can be chalked up as another dream sequence. But wait, what does that mean for Muffin? Catching up with part 3, Jason grabs a change of clothes from the line of the Crystal Lake variety store before murdering its owners, Harold and Edna Hockett. The aforementioned news report reaffirms it's the same day as Ginny's rescue. The following day, Chris Higgins and her friends pass the Hockett shop on their way to Higgins Haven. Upon arriving, Chris tells us it's been 2 years since she returned to the farmhouse, giving us the time frame of her first encounter with Jason.
I know it's only been 2 years, but I feel like I've been away forever.
As usual, but this time in 3D, Jason kills Chris's 6 companions, along with her boyfriend Rick, in a trio of bikers. But really, what was Rick expecting, showing up in the same outfit as Jason's mother? Thanks to practical joker Shelley, the killer picks up his iconic hockey mask. And was that an Alice Sweet Alice reference? In the end, final girl Chris sinks an axe into Jason's face, knocking him down for the count. The next morning, another nonsensical dream sequence has Chris being attacked by an undead Mrs. Voorhees before she's rescued by the police. After that, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, picks things up in the PM. Jason, presumed dead, is taken to the Wessex County Medical Center morgue, where he revives, killing a coroner and a nurse. A news report again verifies the time frame. The next day, we're introduced to the Jarvises, mother Tracy, daughter Trish, and son Tommy.
Honey, get a haircut.
On the road back to Crystal Lake, Jason does in a hitchhiker, and we're introduced to this movie's menu of unsuspecting teenagers. Later in the evening, we see Mrs. Jarvis reading a newspaper detailing Jason's disappearance from the morgue, indicating our time frame. A day later, Jason gets to work on our group of horny teens, which now includes a set of local twins, and murders Mrs. Jarvis while he's at it. Trish and Tommy evade the killer with the help of Jason Hunter, Rob Dyer, who ironically winds up as prey. Earlier, in a rare moment of continuity, Rob revealed he was seeking revenge for the death of his sister, Sandra, who had been killed 5 days earlier in part 2. After discovering Rob's newspaper clippings, Tommy finally gets that haircut in order to resemble a younger Jason. Tommy's appearance distracts Jason long enough for Trish to knock off his mask, giving Tommy the opportunity to take him out. Sometime later, we find Trish in a hospital bed, being consoled by a mini Uncle Fester.
By God, you're right! He is Fester!
Now, one of Rob's clippings refers to Jason as the Friday the 13th murderer. However, in 1985, there wasn't a Friday the 13th during the summer camp season, so my only explanation is that they're lumping Jason's deeds in with those of his mother. Part 2 likely did take place on a Friday though, just not the 13th, as Part 3 does make reference to it being the weekend.
What would a weekend in the country be without sex?
Departing from tradition, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, is the first to not feature a dream sequence, which ended up being cut out in order to emphasize the finality of the franchise. That and the director had shot a similar scene for his previous picture, The Prowler. Meanwhile, in the next film, oh hey, a dream sequence. That's all for the first 4 Friday the 13th films, but I'd like to thank my patrons on Patreon for making this video possible. By pledging $2, patrons get access to uncensored versions of my videos, which in the case of my Frankenhooker dissection is 90% of the runtime. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. and be sure to check out my other videos.